All Village of North Fond du Lac Village trustees to order Monday, September 16, 2019. Audience members are requested to sign in on the sheet provided at the registration table. Citizens wishing to be heard on topics not listed on the agenda may speak under item C. Citizens may be given an opportunity to speak during discussion of items listed on the agenda and are allowed 3 minutes for comments. Disruptive discussion or profanity will not be allowed. Roll call of officers.
Horning.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Streeter.
Here.
Stutz. Here. Will.
Here. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any announcements or communications? Seeing none, moving down to President's business. Oh, I didn't go by citizens' participation, I'm sorry. Citizens are to address the board only. Statements are limited to 3 minutes. The board may not respond to items not listed on the agenda. However, you may ask for an item to be placed on the future agendas. Any citizens to be heard? Seeing none, now we'll go down to announcements and communications. Seeing none. President's business and staff reports, library.
Yep, and Heather is alone at the library tonight, so she couldn't make it. She gave me something to report on. On Track Readers Club will meet this Saturday, September 21st, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. They're discussing the book Before We Were Yours. The book is a historical fiction based on true events that happened under the corrupt leadership of Georgia Tann during the time period of 1930s and 1950s. Everyone is welcome to join us for coffee and a great book discussion. We're open Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're working on getting everything in order for the story times and crafts for the 3 weeks that the children's librarian will be out for a surgery and recovery, so they're trying to fill in that position. They do have a plan in place for the coverage, so story times will not be canceled. She recently met with some leaders of the Fond du Lac County Historical Society. She's been researching yearbook scanning and should have a status report of the historical project for her next library board meeting. And that's all.
All right, thank you. Anything from that?
No, Connie, she got sick this afternoon.
All right. Administrator Nick.
Thank you. Really, it's going to be the same for a while for me. It's budget, and as of late, the last week here, it's been a short week because we got 2 back-to-back board meetings, but that really getting all the insurance stuff pulled together for our employee meeting tomorrow has been, keeping me busy, along with prepping the Public Works budget, along with the other budgets. And as you noticed, the minutes are not done yet from last week. Pretty lengthy meeting, so we'll get that for the next meeting. I'll get both of these minutes done. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Police Department, Darren.
Thank you. Excuse me. I passed around the August report, so you have that in front of you. I also had mentioned in the weekly report that we made a conditional offer last week to a candidate to fill one of our vacancies. The conditional offer is contingent upon them passing the psychological and medical tests. So those things are happening right now, the early part of this week, so we should know by the end of the week where we stand on that. Last Wednesday on 9/11, we received a gift from the 4K class at Arts for Kids. They dropped off a bunch of baked goods and treats for us and for the fire department, along with a big poster thanking us for our service. So definitely want to take a second to recognize them and thank them for that. I think the food lasted all of one shift. So the only other thing I have is last Friday I made our monthly appearance on Behind the Badge. Talked about several things, including taking the opportunity to point out that the board had made the decision to change the trick-or-treat festivities to the Saturday immediately preceding Halloween. And in doing so, just for your information, one more thing that came out of that I hadn't thought of, KFIZ does that Halloween party every year immediately following Trick or Treat, and their plan was to follow Fond du Lac. So this will be kind of a nice thing for North Fond du Lac because it does help get the kids off the street at 5:30 when they're supposed to be done, so that they're home waiting to win prizes. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
I just got one quick question. Just on your report, I mean, assist the citizens, what does that involve? I mean, I'm sure it's a good thing, but...
Assist citizen can be almost anything that isn't a criminal nature. So, we get a lot of phone calls from people. Basically, they lost something and they're looking for help trying to figure out how to go about finding it or replacing it. It can be people just looking for information on how they can better protect themselves against being victims of online crime or better secure their property, things like that. So it's just everything that doesn't really result in a report or a call for service is an assist citizen.
I'm glad they reach out to you for that service, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Anything for Larry Miss?
Oh, no.
Okay. Public Works, Darren.
Okay, thank you. Crew's been pretty busy with water-related stuff the last couple of weeks here. We've had 2 main breaks, one on Chapman Avenue and Willis Court, and another one in the 100 block at Chateau Street. Both of those have been repaired. We're working on replacing concrete and asphalt on those. Last week, the crew also replaced a leaking gate valve in the street at the intersection of Chapman Avenue and Broadway Street. Also, we've been shutting the pool down, starting to winterize pumps, drain pipes and stuff like that for the splash pad, and that should be completed in the next week. And then also crew installed one of the stormwater projects on Main Avenue. We ended up laying some storm sewer in the street to a property line so that homeowners can hook on from that point for their sump pumps and downspouts. That's all I have.
I just want to add to that, if you don't recall what that is, our storm sewer lateral policy, we implemented that by policy about, I want to say 6 years ago, and what that is residents are able to apply for storm sewer lateral to their property, and it is put in free of charge to the property line. We budget $10,000 a year in our storm sewer utility for that to be done. That is picking up a lot of momentum. There's been a lot of, the first couple of years we had 2 or 3 applications, and I think we had like 10 this year. So we may look at increasing that funding next year, but it's definitely solving a lot of these problems that we've been dealing with for so many years and never really had anything to offer. So it's working very well.
So there are drainage issues on Florida also, or is that just me?
There's drainage issues on every street in the village. For
Like
the,
on
I
that
mean,
Deadhead part, or they still have a lot of flooding
Yeah.
on both of those, or?
Yeah, I
on
mean-
Maine and Florida? Or is that helping that too, or no?
This one's gonna be between Main Avenue and Washington Street that they're gonna do a tie into the backyards of those places.
Oh, on the other side, oh, on that part of Maine, oh, gotcha, okay, all right.
Mhm.
I thought you were talking on the
Not on
dead
the-
end.
not on the dead end.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Anything else there? Anybody else have anything for Darren? Okay. All right. Consent agenda. Approve the invoices and authorize checks to be drawn on the respective funds as indicated. General fund, $115,123.18. Library fund, $850.62. EMS fund, $1,066.13. Capital projects, $5,246.90. Water department, $21,927.25. Wastewater department, $885.64. Stormwater fund, $2,480.06. Community Development Authority, $18.42. For a grand total of $147,598.20. And also approve the following operator license for Alonzo Moreno for Dollar General. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
I got a second?
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Will, second by Stutz to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there any discussion?
I just had a couple questions
Ann?
about, so it's on page 4 of the checks, or page 6, I think, of the
Mhm.
whole thing. There's just a camera,
Mhm.
software repair. Could you just give us some more
Sure.
information on that?
Both cameras, well, we have 3 of them at the community center. 1 inside, 2 outside.
Like a surveillance camera?
Yeah, both of the exterior ones have had failing issues that aren't repairable. We did replace both of them with a quite cheaper model, or at least more affordable models. And we also had, if you recall my weekly reports, we had our server that serves all that. We had a lot of issues with it. It actually crashed and had to rebuild that server. A lot of that work had been done gratis in the past by the person involved, because it was kind of a trade-off between that and we were providing wireless on our water tower to them free of charge. So it's kind of, and we still have that arrangement, but this portion of it is definitely not something we had to pay them for the services. It wasn't necessarily budgeted for, and you'll see that. I saw you looking at your budget numbers.
I just wanna see where it was budgeted,
Yep.
what account number that's
Yep,
based
so
on.
it's,
Okay.
that's what it was for.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other,
Yes,
Mike?
on page 9, I'm gonna go down to the Westwood development.
Mhm.
I know that we agreed to some costs, but what does this cost entail?
What does this cost? What?
And what is it?
So, I'll real quickly explain that. So, back in, when did you build?
Ooh,
When did you build your house?
94, 95.
So back in 93 or so, there was an agreement between the village and Psalm, right? That was the
Yes.
developer?
Yep.
That the extension at some point when Fairlawn Avenue would be extended to the north, that the village would pay for the improvement portion adjacent to the existing lots that are on Chapleau Street. I have a copy of the agreement. In lieu of that, we got some right-of-way donated to the village. So as part of the extension that they're doing right now, we are liable for that portion of the extension. The bill that you see in front of you of, I don't remember the exact amount,
11,000.
11,000, 6,000 of that is for water main. So that's why you'll see that's charged to the 602 account. And then the remainder is general fund for the street base. There was no storm sewer or sanitary needed in that section. So the next cost we will incur will be curb and gutter, sidewalks, and the asphalt. We will be paying for that also. This is something that kind of popped up. We don't necessarily have the money budgeted for. In the water utility, it's not a big deal because it just kind of works itself out. In the general fund, to be quite honest, it's $5,000 of our capital. We have that capital fund balance sitting there that we can definitely support that with. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do
Any
you
other
know
questions?
Ann?
how much is the curb and gutter? How much do you expect that to cost?
I'd be guessing. We have an
What would you
estimate.
guess?
I
Like
don't wanna guess.
$10,000, like $50,000?
No, between 10 and 20, I'll say,
Okay.
for the rest of it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more question about that? When do you expect to put that in?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what their intentions are. I don't know. It's dependent a little bit on what lots sell and stuff, so.
Question I got is, are they gonna wait to do it all at once and not gonna do that second?
Well, the only thing they may do is binder and then wait for the surface course. We've done that before, but yes, they won't be putting in the curb and gutter and then waiting 10 years to put in the asphalt.
Okay.
Yes.
But
If
the
that's a
question to you
question.
is the curb and gutter, when's that
Yep.
gonna work?
That's what I don't know.
Okay.
It's dependent on when home sale is. It's developer's agreement is based on, there is a set timeline, but there's also based on on lot sales. Yep.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Moving down to resolutions. Discussion and possible action on resolution 14-2019, a resolution authorizing borrowing of not to exceed $1,495,000 and providing for the insurance and sale of general obligation promissory notes therefore.
Thank you. I've included the resolution along with the pre-sale report from Ellers in your packets. It goes through a number of items. It also includes the project list that we discussed the last two meetings as part of our CIP. A portion of these projects have been completed and paid for. We did pass a resolution last year, if you recall, approving us to do so. John Cameron is here actually from Ellers to explain further. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Happy to be here in the village this evening. What I'd like to do is walk through the pre-sale report, which I understand is in your packets, and just kind of walk through the highlights of the upcoming borrowing. So we're here for the issuance of $1,495,000 of general obligation promissory notes, Series 2019A. It's financing a number of different items, but primarily equipment, facility, park, and street improvements. The debt service will be paid directly by ad valorem property tax revenues. This is a general obligation debt issuance, so it will count against your total GO outstanding debt limit, which every municipality in the state of Wisconsin is limited to how much general obligation borrowing capacity you have. You're limited to 5% of your total equalized value. At the end of 2019, you'll have approximately $5.9 million, which will be 56% of your limit. your remaining borrowing capacity after this financing will be about $4.6 million. The term and call feature for the debt issuance, so the debt issuance is being issued for a term of 9 years, which makes it notes rather than bonds. So anything from 0 to 10 years is considered to be notes. Anything over 10 years under state statute would be bonds.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, I'm on the executive summary, so on page 1 of the pre-sale report.
Cameron, just a quick question. Typically, I remember we always did a 10-year term.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing 9, not that it just...
I think just based on the term and the overall structure in terms of the debt, and then also keeping the overall tax rate goal in line as well.
10? All right, I get it, all right.
The other item that we'd be looking for with the debt issuance is a call feature, which is very common. Would make the debt callable really after December 1st, 2026. So it would allow the village to either prepay the debt or refinance the debt at that point for interest rate savings. So it's a fairly common feature and something we'd be looking for on this debt issuance as well. The other two items that I'll cover on this page is number one, this debt issuance would be considered to be bank qualified. The village is issuing less than $10 million in a calendar year of tax exempt debt. Would make the issue bank qualified, which really just expands the potential pool of underwriters that may bid on it. Which hopefully yields the best possible interest rate for the village on the transaction. The other item to point out here is rating. So the village historically has not sought a bond rating, and I know this is something that my colleague Greg Johnson has been talking with Nick about as part of the upcoming borrowing. And really, I think the feeling here is that the time is right to look at seeking out a rating as part of this transaction. So there are two major rating agencies in the United States, Moody's and Standard & Poor's. What we've identified here is looking at obtaining a rating with Moody's. A bond rating really enhances potentially the overall interest rate that the village would receive and lower the cost of money associated with the borrowing. So there are a number of different factors that go into a rating. There'll be a rating call that'll be set up with Moody's that will be on, as well as representatives from the village. So it'll be a process that will go through between now and the time the actual debt is issued. So I think really based on the overall financial performance of the village, fund balance, that those are some pretty strong indicators in your favor, and really would be looking to get you into the rating perspective, and hopefully at least into the high single A category, if not potentially double A.
Is there a cost for that?
There is, and we have that built into the financing. So something that we have to weigh when we look at deciding whether to obtain a rating versus not obtain a rating. Really, the cost you want to be overset a couple times over by the corresponding interest rate savings that you would get by having debt be rated. So that's certainly something that you have to take into consideration here as well.
So in the past, we were in that financial condition to get a rating?
There's a number of factors that I think go into it. I mean, size of the municipality also factors into that. So I think really it's kind of balancing the overall financial position of the village, the overall debt burden of the village, compared to some of the other factors that may the rating agency may look at. The size of the municipality, diversity of the tax base, the overall economy of not only the village but the greater area. So all of that factors into the rating perspective, and then we're also looking at the overall cost of the rating relative to the benefit that you'll receive.
Any idea what type of interest rate we would have?
Yeah, I'll talk about that here in a second. Yep.
Thank you.
Going to page 2, just the one item that I'll highlight here is method of sale and placement. So We'll be looking to do this on a competitive sale basis, has really been the history here with the village, especially when we're talking about the issuance of, just general obligation promissory notes. There's no story to tell where you'd want to bring in a particular underwriter or bank or lender, get them on board and explain the situation. Really, from our perspective, in a competitive type situation, the more competition you bring in, the better off you are from the village perspective, and better interest rates that you hope to receive. So if you jump ahead then to page 4, just to kind of walk you through the timeline here. So we're here this evening looking to get the authorization to proceed and walk through the pre-sale report. Be looking at potentially going through the due diligence call and conference call with the rating agency the week of October 7th, distributing the primary offering document, which is the official statement for the debt issuance on or around October 11th. And then the sale itself would occur on October 21st. So we would hold the sale in the morning, usually around 9, 10, or 11 o'clock are sale times. And then either Greg or myself would be out at the village board meeting that night, hopefully walking through very good sale results with you all. So from a competitive sales standpoint, really we'd be setting a sale day time, taking bids at that time, determining who the overall best bid was, and recommending that underwriter that night for final approval. Then estimated closing date on November 14th. So that would really be the date that funds would be wired to the village. Just to walk through a couple of worksheets with you. If you look at the next page, page 5. Page 5 shows just your existing debt, or what we would call your base case scenario. So it shows your total annual principal and interest payments from 2019 out through 2026. After that, your debt drops off, your existing debt drops off. Your general obligation debt is abated by a couple of different sources: the water utility, sewer utility, TID 1 and TID 2. So you have your total general obligation debt service payments less the amount that is abated by other revenue sources, leaves you with a net overall tax levy for debt. A total equalized value TID out, which then we're projecting out over time. I will note that 2023, you see the box highlighted, that jump up in equalized value is associated with the projected closure of TID 1. And then you take your total net tax levy divided by your equalized value, leaves you a tax rate per thousand associated with debt. So right now you're at $3.97 per thousand, and that drops steadily through 2023, and then eventually falls off after 2026. So layering in your new debt here, if you look at page 6, page 6 is the estimated financing plan with the listing of projects, the estimated financing expenses, and total net issuance size of $1,495,000. So, Chuck, to answer your question from earlier, the rating agency fee here is $10,000, and that's built into the sizing.
Question on the rating agency, does that increase the time, the process of getting this?
No, it doesn't. Nope, it doesn't. We've got that built into the timeline. Yep.
I mean, if we weren't doing it, would it be quicker?
No, it's still usually about that month in between meetings, and that gives us enough time to put the official statement together. And there's quite a lot of information that goes into it, and a lot of information that comes from staff to put that primary offering document together, do the due diligence call, and prepare for sale. So typically, it's a month between the time that you set the sale and the time that you actually hold the sale.
The village in 2 years, there's another loan process. Is there another rating that has to happen at that time?
There potentially would be, yes.
And
Yep.
when I talked to Greg about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it also has a lot to do with our consistency with you mentioned before, our debt service compared to our overall budget. But the way he explained it to me, I thought was more about we have consistency in our borrowing, and everything has been consistent now, where in the past, he probably wouldn't have suggested us to get rating for these
Sure.
borrows. And by doing this, you guys feel that this is going to save us money
Correct,
by
yeah.
going through this process, even though it costs us the 10,000 more, that they wouldn't suggest it otherwise.
Right, right. So again, we're weighing that cost, and that cost is built into the financing versus the interest rates that we're gonna receive from being rated versus non-rated, where from an underwriting perspective, the potential purchaser of your debt is having to really do more due diligence on, the overall financial position of the municipality relative to having a rating, which is a nice quick indicator and a strong indicator of financial performance. So I think, as Greg pointed out, you're on a consistent every other year borrowing, which is stable. You've got a stable plan in place, and you've been following that pretty diligently. And so all of that factors into play here as well.
The other thing I just want to add in at this point on that same page, the previous page, we're at $3.97. We had talked to the tax rate. If you recall, when I presented the CIP originally, I had showed you a different report from Ellers that I had a conversation with Greg late last year, hoping we could trim that tax rate. Had been right around $4 and a little bit over $4 per thousand. It was at $3.97 this year. Hoping we could trim that down to about $3.50. I mentioned that a couple meetings ago. And that part of the reason I'm thinking too, or because of that 9-year, he's trying to fit that all into this plan looking forward, assuming I'll borrow every 2 years and assuming what size those borrows will be. He's trying to fit it around that 345 to 350 mark for tax rate, because we're trying to reduce that to that from $4.
Right, and we do have that shown
Yep.
here. I'll walk through that here in a second.
Is that rating good for a certain period of time, or just?
It's good for the life of that debt issuance, so it stays with the debt issuance. It can change, so they do surveillance ratings from time to time, looking at, the overall financial position, what's happening in the larger economy. But then in a future debt issuance, when you go for another rating, they will again conduct that rating process and assign a rating to that debt issuance. So going to page 7 of the pre-sale report, what page 7 shows, walking from left to right, your existing debt shown on the left-hand side that I just walked through, kind of a summarized version of the overall debt and tax rate. The proposed financing and estimated interest rates. So the question on, what sort of interest rates are we seeing right now? We're projecting a range between about 1.7 and 1.95 in terms of overall interest rates and where the market is right now. If you've kind of been following news on more of a national scale, interest rates are really approaching near historic levels. So the kind of the low water mark that we saw was in the summer of 2016. We hit that point not too long ago. Interest rates have started to come back up a little bit, but generally speaking, they're at extremely low levels. So that's why you see these projections here, really below 2% for a 9-year term is pretty hard to beat. So the overall tax rate, when you combine your existing debt, net debt levy, and what you're adding here, if you look at the second to, I guess third to last column, considering the year, that's the total tax rate for debt service. Really, in 2020, kind of coming to $3.54, and then starting to come below that $3.50 per thousand. Now, if you look at the next page, what Greg had put in the packet, just really for illustration purposes, is trying to model out some hypothetical debt issuances right around 1,375,000 every other year through 2025, and then just showing what that overall tax rate would be. So really, as you see, if you look at the very far right-hand side, that total tax rate that takes into consideration not only your existing debt, what's proposed, but then those debt issuances that are being illustrated in 2021, 23, and 25. And that tax rate really stays right around $3.50 per thousand. Actually, it hovers just below that at 340, about 346, 348. So I think what's being shown here is staying on that every year path and doing borrowings just under about 1.4 million with the projections and growth and equalized value, keeps that tax rate for debt really consistently right around that $3.50 level. So I think really achieving the goal that you want.
Wouldn't the closing out of TID 1 lower that in 23, 24,
Mhm.
rather than keeping it the same? So 346, 346.
That's just the way they've structured the debt to
Right.
accommodate it.
Correct.
staying
I see.
Even.
Yeah, you see a little bit higher principal payment in 2023.
Oh, that's right.
And that's to keep, again, that's by design,
Yes.
to keep that tax rate
All right.
And
stable.
I wanted to add to that discussion, keep in mind, there's still another $6 of tax rate that will increase, you know what I mean? There's $9 per thousand, the other $6 will also, it's not like we're using all of our increase up on debt service, is what I'm trying to say.
It's going to, yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, about 30% of it is going to debt service, the other 70% of it is available for other things.
Yes.
So the other thing to point out, if you stay on that trajectory, you'd have potentially another debt issuance in 2027, which would then start repayment in as early as 2028. If you look at that overall tax rate, you see a drop from between 2027 to 2028. So again, setting yourself up nicely to keep around that $3.50 range, even out beyond this planning horizon. Then the final page, and I'll be happy to turn it back over to you, is the general obligation debt capacity projection. So again, back to that overall 5% of your total equalized value and where this debt issuance and then hypothetically into the future debt issuances would put you. Right now, if you look at follow from left to right, so your GO debt limit is based on your total TID-in equalized value or total equalized value of the village. So you are at 42% of your overall limit. Undertaking this debt issuance would bring you up to about 56% of your limit. Going out into the future, layering in the other debt issuances that are being proposed here potentially would keep you around 61, 62% as kind of that high water mark, and then start to drop you down into the 50s. The other thing I'll point out on this worksheet that isn't on the previous page is the potential for general obligation bonds in 2020 for utilities projects that the village may be considering. We wanted to add this into this page just from a conservancy standpoint to say if you did have to issue debt next year and it was general obligation in nature, where might that put you in terms of your overall debt capacity? So not saying that will happen or you will do that, but again, just giving you a sense from a planning standpoint where that might put you. The other thing to point out with your utilities is there is the possibility, if you are considering debt as early as next year, there is the possibility of a refunding of one of your existing revenue bonds that we may look at in conjunction with the upcoming potential utilities projects.
Are we looking at a utility project next year?
Yeah, if you recall in the CIP, there was $900,000 in there for well 5, which we're still not sure on that one, but then there was also quite a bit of money for Beshot Avenue for sanitary and water. And if you add all of those things together along with the portions of the vehicles, public works stuff that's utility based, we pulled all the utility based stuff out of this just because of the timing of it. I talked to Greg about it, and we can certainly go back and borrow another GO note separately. Given its size, he didn't feel like it would really be that much of a cost inhibitor. It wouldn't be that much more by doing it that way. We also are considering looking at different types of loans through Clearwater Fund and things like that. So, but as John mentioned, we always have to keep in mind our debt capacity and how that affects that. So. That's why they put it on here.
Okay.
So that's really it from me.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Sure, absolutely.
So with that, then, the follow-up to this is the passing of the resolution approving the issuance, the sale of the promissory note, and then Millers can move forward with the rest of the timeline.
Okay, so we have resolution 14-2019, resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $1,495,000 and providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes. Therefore, whereas it is necessary that the funds be raised by the Village of North Fond du Lac, Fond du Lac County, Wisconsin, the village, for the purpose of paying for the costs of village capital improvement projects, including improvements to village facilities, road repairs, resurfacing, and reconstruction, and equipment acquisition, the project, and there are insufficient funds on hand to pay said costs. Whereas the village hereby finds and determines that the project is within the village's power to undertake and serves a public purpose, that term is defined in section 67.04 sub 1B of the Wisconsin statutes, and whereas villages are authorized by the provisions of section 67.12 sub 12 of the Wisconsin statutes to borrow and to issue general obligation promissory notes for such public purposes. Now therefore be it resolved by the village board of the village that section 1, authorization of the notes for the purpose of paying the cost of the project, there shall be borrowed pursuant to section 67-12 or 67.12 sub 12 of the Wisconsin statutes, the principal sum of not to exceed $1,495,000 from the purchaser to be determined by subsequent resolution of this village board, the purchaser. Section 2, sale of the notes. To evidence such indebtedness, the village president and village clerk are hereby authorized, empowered, and directed to make, execute, issue, and to sell to the purchaser for, on behalf of, and in the name of the village, general obligation promissory notes aggregating the principal amount of not to exceed $1,495,000, the notes. Section 3, award of the notes. The village clerk, in consultation with the village's financial advisor, Ehlers and Associates Incorporated, shall prepare or cause to be prepared an official notice of sale and an official statement, and take other actions necessary for the sale and award of the notes on October 21st, 2019. Section 4, prior resolutions. Severability, effective date. All prior resolutions, rules, or other actions of the village or any parts thereof in conflict with the provisions hereof shall be, and the same are, hereby rescinded insofar as the same may so conflict. In the event that any one of or more provisions hereof shall, for any reason, be held to be illegal or invalid, such illegality or invalidity shall not affect other provisions hereof. The foregoing shall take effect immediately upon adoption and approval in the manner provided by law, adopted and recorded this 16th day of September 2019. What is the board's pleasure?
Make a motion to approve resolution number 14, 2019.
I got a second?
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion by Horn, second by Price to approve resolution 14-2019. Are there any other questions or comments on this resolution? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Thanks,
Thank you
John.
for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Thanks, you too. Moving down to administrative discussion and possible action on 2020 Public Works, Facilities, Culture, Recreation, and Conservation, and Development budgets.
I had provided the budgets in the packet. I mentioned I was going to print them. There's some minor changes between Friday and today, and that's only based on the changes that were made last week to the health insurance co-payments and such. So it's very, very minimal. So if you're looking at the two budgets, one on your tablets versus the one that's printed in front of you, there's gonna be some slight differences, but that's all the differences that are in there. So with that, I will turn it over to Darren to kind of go through that. And I'm assuming you probably just kind of go through the highlights and ask questions where you feel fit.
All right, starting with DPW administration. Do we want to do line items, or do we want to talk about what we've been doing in the last?
Just the highlights, and then if the board has questions on sections.
Pretty much the first 9 lines are wages and retirement or benefits related. That's just increase, cost of living increases for those. Pretty much first one we get down to CDL, drug testing, pretty much we're in a pool for that, so it varies year to year on how many people get drawn for that pool or out of that pool, so gonna leave that number budgeted the same at $800. IT network is,
One thing I'll jump in on the IT network and phones, and most of these budgets, I haven't had the time to completely go through the IT budget. I mentioned a few meetings ago that we need a new server, which is about $20,000, along with several PCs, maybe 7 PCs. Those will be sprinkled into all of these budgets, so don't get hung up on those numbers right now. Then I actually highlighted them. If you look on your tablets, you'll see that I highlighted a lot of the number on there. So the IT in all budgets, I think I said the same thing last year when we were going through this, just kind of ignore at this point. It's not really fixed completely yet. They will go up, I can guarantee that, so.
I just have a question on the health insurance. I know it went up,
Yep.
and, but it's 37%. Do you have expectation more people are going to participate in taking it this year, or just all that is an increase from the health
So-
insurance premiums?
And I can speak to that. Chris and I have discussed this. The 37% increase, we're assuming, as I mentioned last week, we're assuming the worst. We have a vacant position, we're assuming family plan and in the worst case scenario with all of our hires that we don't currently have hired. I do expect that we may see one move away, take a buyout possibly, which would save some money, and we probably also know that the person that we hire, it may or may not happen by the first of the year, it might be halfway through the, this is kind of assuming the worst case scenario.
Okay,
Does that answer the question?
kind of, yeah, because the person that vacated that position had health insurance too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, okay,
Is that all right?
yep.
So I guess on that same line item, it looks like we're at 22,000 so far year to date.
Yeah.
But we're expecting 72.
Chris, you want to answer that?
Okay, so the way we budget for the health insurance, we budget it all in the DPW administration. However, they work all over, whether it's in parks, streets, pool, all the facilities. We don't budget any benefits in there, the health or dental, because it's too hard to know who's going to be working where. Do they have a single plan, a family plan, a subscriber spouse? So what you would have to do is this 22,000 plus then you'd have to look at the other facilities budgets.
okay.
And you'll see a health insurance year-to-date amount in there for current amount, but you'll see nothing's been budgeted. So you have to take and add all those up, and that's what makes up,
At
the
72.
budget of the
Yep.
72,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Can I just ask one more question? So the phones are 0 year to date as well.
So,
just-
I can explain that. I just talked to Chris about this today. So what's happening is the telephone portion is at a negative $38. It's just, there's a accounting error right now, the way it's being, there's some credits being put in, and there's expenses going out of this account, but not all the expenses are going out, and all the credits are coming back to this account, so we just gotta we were just working
Okay.
on the spreadsheet today.
Is
It's
that-
all accounted for in the budget somewhere.
Okay.
But it's not accounting properly. We have a new spreadsheet that we just worked on this afternoon, and we'll get that fixed.
Okay,
Yep. I had that one highlighted too, if you looked on your tablet,
yep, on the old copy.
on the old copy, and on the new copy. It's just you can't see it.
It did, yeah. that's
Yeah,
fine.
I didn't print the color.
Yeah.
You can't see
It's okay.
the lines are gone there. Yeah, I apologize. Any other questions on that DPW admin?
You want to touch base with the question I asked at the time about that
Yeah.
extra mileage and travel that was,
Yes, this is the one. The travel and mileage
And I'll double check that, Mike, because it still seems, I just gotta look at my notes and I don't have those with me, but, Mitch, there's a DPW administration, Public Works Super Advisory
Supervisory Academy.
Academy, and we're starting to send Mitch to that stuff. And I know that's part of that, but I'll have to dig out my notes, and then Darren I'll talk with you tomorrow to see if you had any additions to that, but it still does seem a little high. So we'll look at that. That'll be something to bring back.
Moving on then to vehicle maintenance, vehicle and equipment maintenance. First one down would be fuels and lubricants. Actually, we're doing pretty well this year with fuel prices. That's kind of always a volatile guess on what fuel's gonna do. We're coming into snow plowing season where we burn more fuel than on a normal day, but I still think we're gonna be safe with what we budgeted last year, and I'm gonna hope it stays the same for next year. Small tools and equipment, that's just, stuff that we need for vehicle maintenance and stuff, other than what the mechanic supplies for his tools. Vehicle maintenance and repair, estimating that we need to purchase some things yet this year for some vehicles. We kind of holding off on purchasing tires and stuff until October is usually a month when we see a discount in tires to purchase. Just before winter, all these places have tire sales. Same thing, equipment, we're doing pretty good so far on equipment repairs. Any questions on vehicle and equipment maintenance numbers? Then we'll go into streets. My estimate is going to be that we're gonna spend out mostly what we have for tree trimming and removal. You're all aware that we have a lot of trees to remove yet. That number pretty much stays the same for next year. That increase in tree trimming and removal is the labor increase, otherwise we're budgeting the same. I did have a discussion with Nick on upping that number, and he recommended that I keep it the same for our removals and stuff, just because we have so many ash to remove yet. Street painting should be about the same for next year. Street materials, gravel, asphalt, that sort of stuff, other than utility-related stuff. Feel that we're gonna be
And salt.
on budget.
Is the salt in there?
Salt shed is full to start the year out, so we should make it through the start of the snow season with the salt that we have in place already. We filled that in the spring when the price was cheaper. Same thing, small tools and equipment, that's the shovels and brooms and all that stuff we need for streets. Equipment rental. That is, I don't think we're gonna probably overspend our total budget. One of the things we were looking at was the leaf vacuum, which I went out and sought out and found out we cannot get one before leaf season this year. The number that I did have in the capital budget would be good if we purchased one this year. I found that out, that they would honor that price that I received. If we do wait, the price is, email that I had from today actually said that there's gonna be an increase in the cost of that piece of equipment in the future here, or for next year. But he wasn't totally 100% sure what the cost increase would be. But for equipment rental, there's a possibility that we could possibly rent one this year yet. To give it a test run and see how it works for us. Gas and electric, that's a number that I base off of what we've used so far over the last 12 months. That gives me my estimated actual. Even though it's 70,000 this year, with Alliant said that we may even see a decrease in electric run down the equipment rental. Those would both incorporate the bulky pickup that we do alternating years. That would be the increase for those two. And recycling, they didn't project any cost increase in our contract of the recycling cost, or recycling contract that we have.
So Derek, are we gonna try something different with bulky waste? I know we talked about that a little bit. Or are we gonna do the same? Cause we, you know, we talked.
Budget here, we're looking at doing the curbside collection. Nick and I have been discussing it, and if we did a drop-off site at the garage, we'd look at, we're still gonna have landfill costs associated with that. Instead of the proposed $9,500 proposed increase, we'd still be looking at estimating somewhere around $7,000 in landfill costs. So we'd have a savings of $2,500 there. What we would save is the equipment rental of $7,000 for the waste management truck that we get.
Cause we talked about, when we talked about the leaf act, we're talking about saving guys' backs and everything and tying up the crew for a week, and that was the direction that we were gonna discuss.
So we'd be looking at saving roughly $9,500 if we did a drop-off site. If we did a drop-off site and we got dumpsters hauled in to haul the stuff out, that would cut into the savings of that $9,500. If we did something else where we just had residents drop it off at the garage and we took it, hauled it with our 5-yard dump trucks, kind of crushed it down, loaded it, and hauled it out by ourselves, we wouldn't have that equipment rental fee, but we'd still be spending the labor in sanitation. If we don't spend the labor in sanitation, the labor is just gonna get dispersed out into other parts of the budget, because we still put in the 40 hours a week.
I mean, do we wanna try that next year to see how it goes? I mean, it's a nice service that we provide for folks, but, I mean, we've been doing it for quite a few years, and, I mean, I know people are gonna complain because they're gonna have to find a way to get it down there, but, you know, it's not our responsibility if people collect a lot of stuff, you know. So, I just wanted to see what, Nick.
Yeah, I think that's been a hot topic over the years with residents, especially elderly residents, that we do get those phone calls, well, I don't have anywhere to take it. You know, they call us every year. There's people calling us asking if it's bulky waste pickup here. Certainly, a lot of other communities have gone that route, and in fact, I think the city now, it's open all the time, as long as they're open, and I think there is a cost involved with dropping stuff off, correct? So that's certainly something we could look at too. In a way, from just from a personnel standpoint, it would probably be better off, in my opinion, to have it open all the time, as long as we're verifying their residents. I'm not suggesting we need to do that the first year. Maybe the first year, if the board wants to try the drop-off site, maybe we do it for a week. Darren and I've talked about this. We probably would have like one of our seasonal help babysit it, so to speak, to make sure we're not getting, hazardous materials, refrigerators, things like that we normally don't pick up. But I assure you, there's going to be plenty of residents that are not gonna be happy about it because of having to find somebody to haul it down there. Now, I get it, it's $9,500. We're assuming that right now it costs us $9,500 just for tipping fees. That's how much more it costs us. We're assuming that if we do a drop-off site, we're not gonna have that as much stuff dropped off. We also expect to increase on our recycling, our steel. A lot of that gets picked up by scrappers driving around and picking it up before we get there. So we would definitely have more steel probably. And we'd also don't expect we'd have nearly as much garbage to haul out. So would we save $9,500 on tipping fees? I say no, we're assuming 7,000, that's about 75%. I would guess it might even be a little less than that. But it certainly, I think, was getting abused last time, and we really don't have a way to patrol that, but.
And the streets just look
Yeah.
awful during that time, so that's why I wanted to bring it up and talk about it. Is how you got, Nick?
That's all I had, yeah.
Chuck?
I'm wondering, it is a service that the village residents are enjoying. I'm wondering if we should kind of wait to see how the numbers pan out for the total budget, see how much of an impact it really has on the levy, and decide as another factor in making that decision. I'm not sure we have to make that decision tonight. Do you think we have to make it tonight, or?
I don't think we have to make it tonight. I mean, we certainly can make it tonight. depending on what the village board wants us to do, there's always another kick at the can here, you know, later on when we start knowing revenue numbers. But again, is it based on where we sit with the revenue numbers, or is it based on what we want to do? That's what I guess I don't know right now, what the board's feelings are on that.
I mean, for me, I'm looking at, I mean, the board made the decision to try the leaf pickup thing, and I get that, you know, trying to save the crew's backs and all that stuff, and I think this is just another way of looking out. I mean, you got health costs, you know, skyrocketing, and if we can do something to prevent possible injuries and having someone out, because when we got such a small crew and someone's out, that sure affects everybody when we're trying to get stuff done, and I just wanted to see what everybody else is thinking, Mike.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought we were talking there, but it forces a lot of people to get out and get their stuff out. They see people doing it, it's kind of like a thing that, it's that time of year. I think you won't have nowhere near the use down here in the garage. I bet you'd be lucky to have half of it, and people just enjoy it. There's something they look forward to, and I think that going back to the leaf thing is, it's also a benefit for the taxpayers out here that are paying the bill out here, to give them some relief for raking their lakes and raking their leaves and all that stuff too. So, the other question I got is, pricing on the dumpsters, have you priced that out? I don't know if I agree with the village knocking it down, handling it again, and hauling it outside, but I mean, do we have you probably looked at it last time.
If I think I looked at it a little bit, me and Darren were talking about it, but I think if we use dumpsters, it'll probably cost us more. Because we're not able to compact that garbage. We're getting about 8 to 10 ton on a truck, reloading garbage truck. If we haul it, we had to haul some ourselves in the last batch, and we're getting about 2 ton. We're not gonna be able to, and those dumpsters are about $500 to $600 for a 30 ton dumpster. 30-yard dumpster.
30-yard dumpster.
Sorry.
And another thing, I don't see the metal recycling. I think if they load it in a vehicle, they're just gonna haul it to American. I mean, I get it.
Yeah,
in the
we get
perfect
more than
world.
what we're getting now, though, I can guarantee
Probably
that.
so. I would have totally agree with that. I would have totally agree with that.
Like what Nick was saying, if we do dumpsters placed at the garage, people haul down and put in the dumpsters, it's gonna get thrown directly into the dumpster. It's not gonna get compacted like it does when we do curbside with the refuse truck. Refuse truck, we're getting 4 loads a day at about 8 ton a load. The day we had to finish up last year, we picked up our loader and our dump trucks. We were able to, just by putting it into the dump truck and crushing it with a bucket a little bit, we were about 2 ton a load, and that was for a 5-yard load. 15-yard refuse truck was hauling 8 ton. So we have a lot more dumpsters being hauled down than we would a refuse truck. So our cost is gonna go back up by having to rent dumpsters at $9,500. Well, the $7,000 equipment rental would most definitely get eaten up with dumpster rental.
One quick last question. Most of the work, is it being done by the loader or the guys physically lifting the stuff, throwing it in? Or, I mean, the heavy stuff, I'm sure the loader does the majority of the work, but I'm sure that.
All of the refuse is thrown in by hand.
Okay.
The loader is too large to dump into the refuse truck, so it's, the heavy things are usually 2 guys lifting and stuff. A lot of the smaller stuff is 1 guy grabbing boxes, throwing it in, just 5-man crew working behind the refuse truck.
And did you want to weigh in? Or?
Well, what do you think about Nick's suggestion to have it available all the time for people? Would that be, I mean, from a staffing perspective, would that help? Or, I guess, how do you feel about that?
Me?
No, Darren. I mean, if there's not, people aren't coming all the time, or if they could come whenever they wanted, would that, how do you feel that would play into this situation?
I don't know that we would staff it 100% of the time then. If we had certain hours of 1 day a week, 2 days a week, certain hours,
Mhm.
that we would staff it like that people were allowed to drop stuff off, I think that would work rather than having it open 8 hours a day.
Is there someone there already that would already be there at a certain
No.
time? No, so you'd have to staff it, so it would be additional.
We have to staff
Or,
it.
well, we could make it work probably, when it's not like we'd have to hire somebody to be there. We
Right.
just,
Uh-huh.
adjust someone's schedule to make sure that they're
And if we just did it during the summer months, it would be a seasonal
Sure.
employee that we would staff it with
Mhm.
for checking IDs and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a nice alternative too, to
Or-
be able to do it whenever.
Instead of a week pickup, just pick a month like July and say July 1st, July 31st, you know, you can bring your stuff down. And I mean, I would like to try, Randy, you get?
Yeah, I just think, I certainly explore that. But on the other hand, I mean, the truck, I mean, we should just wait a little bit and see what the numbers are. Also, that, I'm gonna afford also the, I mean, that's not.
If you think that the cost will get eaten up, you know, getting dumpsters or whatever, you know, I mean, I think the payoff for possible injuries is the thing that we should be looking at. You know, I mean, yeah, you want the convenience and that nice thing for everybody in the village, but I mean, we've been doing it forever and, you know, like I said, it's not this board or the village's responsibility if people collect a lot of stuff. You know, that's, you know, and plus all the stuff that's on the street also that when people put it over the curb and everybody thinking through it, it's a mess. Yeah.
Just to add to that, and just kind of thinking as we're speaking here, just keeping it open maybe all the time, the more I think about that, if that's the route we go, maybe there is to be considered a fee associated with that, because if it's like 1 week or 1 month a year and everybody kind of cleans out their trash, that's one thing, that's your bulky waste pickup. But you know, if people are bringing things there constantly, we don't want to make ourselves a dump either. I mean, the more I think about that option, that if we're going to do that, I think there should definitely be a charge associated with people dropping stuff off. So maybe if the board wants to move towards no more curbside pickup, or if we want to wait and see where the numbers are, if we were going to move away from curbside pickup this year, I would suggest that we go to maybe a 2-week time frame where you have to bring it down to the garage this time. And if we want to explore in the future, maybe for future years, that we would have it open, but there'd be a fee associated, and we would probably model it something similar to what the city's doing. And we could still do both. We could still have a week or two where you can drop it off free of charge, but then you'd still have this, you know, dropping things off throughout the year. It's a thought. So.
I don't know, I mean, I'd like to try it for a couple of weeks next year and just see how it goes. I mean, if it sounds like it might be a wash with the equipment rental, one way or the other, and you're saving possible injuries, I think that's the main thing. What did you?
And I think that, doesn't sound like Waste Management had that service already where you can drop it off and pay for that.
Mhm.
So I mean, that's
Mhm.
a service that's already out there.
Right.
You know, so I don't know if we,
That is higher than the city charges to drop off at their job site.
what kind of hours they run by the city?
I believe that's open anytime. They're staffed at the city garage with people there throughout the day, not because they're the size of their crew and stuff like that. I believe that they have someone there most times of the day.
Not the weekends.
No, not the
Yeah.
weekend.
Chris might know what that hours are. Did you drop things off?
They used to have Saturday hours, but I know they changed their policy, so I don't want to speak
Mhm.
for sure. It did change a little bit this last year, so I haven't had to use it recently.
Yeah, I don't know what their whole policy is for.
So what would you want to do, Darren, in your journey?
I'd like to give it a try of doing it drop off at the garage.
What,
or
2
the
weeks
crew.
or 1 week or?
Couple of week period, and, my thought would be, I think we could haul more in dumpsters, have someone haul the dumpsters out that we could fit in our dump trucks. Using our dump trucks is gonna take labor of one of my guys running the loader and multiple guys running the dump trucks to haul things out. If we went with dumpsters, even though it's not gonna save us as much money, dumpster company's gonna come and pick up the dumpster. I'd be using one person to load the dumpsters.
Oh, Chuck.
Typically, when you do something like that, do residents come and just throw it on the sidewalk, on the floor, then
We
you have
probably
to,
have to assist them.
I mean, there's not a ramp where the dumpster is ground level. I mean,
So some of the stuff that we pick up curbside, there's no way a resident's gonna be able to lift that up and over a dumpster. We probably have to have someone there to assist.
So
So if we
that's-
did it over.
Or pile it just
come and
pick it
throw
up with
later.
the loader or something later.
In the city, it's like separated, if you have metal,
Sure.
or if you have wood. And then, like you said, a seasonal person comes the next day, and then they take a loader and they throw it in the dumpster,
Yep.
is how it used to be.
Or in our case, our seasonal employees don't run the loader, but
Maybe Darren could do some research and reach out to Fond du Lac and see what they're doing, Waste Management does. And you talk about the dumpsters, they have the lower dumpster too, that instead of having the 5-foot one, you got like a 3.5-foot dumpster that, not saying you still can lift the couch over, but it's a little bit easier lifting stuff over. So there's different heights for the lower ones. I know you can't get much into them, but you can get.
So is everybody okay with Darren checking that out, and then we'll just revisit it? If you wanna put it back on the agenda when Darren gets some information. Is
Yep.
everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. Moving on. We done with sanitation now, Darren, or?
just writing a note here, just 1 second. Okay, yes, done with sanitation then. Any other questions on sidewalk or sanitation before? Weed and nuisance control, that's basically our weed control. That's mowing of weeds and stuff like that. Since we've gone to where I issue weed notices to residents, and last year the board approved using village's equipment and having our crew do it on after hours. We haven't incurred any contractor costs to that. I've cut that number down just in the case that I have one that we have to hire a contractor for. And then the last item on the page is the weed control. That's weed sprays that we buy and use for the paths in the parks, the mowing that we do along streets and stuff like that. So that's basically the pesticide, or the material we buy for spraying weeds. Any other questions on weeds?
The next several pages are all the detail pages for all of that, those sections, so if we're done with that, then we can skip forward to the municipal building facilities section. And Darren, maybe just from a time standpoint, if we just maybe take this section by section and ask if if there's any real big changes, highlight those, and if the board has questions, we can just highlight those, otherwise we probably don't need to. Some of these numbers, I think are pretty similar, we don't necessarily have to go through them all.
Big one in the municipal building, you'll see an increase in maintenance repair facility. Most of that is, we did have a boiler fail in this building this year, and we found out that the water in our system needs to be treated to make the boiler life last longer. So that is $2,200 for the year for equipment and chemical to treat the water that's in our boiler system in this building. The other part of that increase is I've been trying to do the floors, the waxing and stuff with staff, and we just don't have the time. So I looked at contracted pricing of stripping and waxing of all the floors in all the facilities. And for this building, it's $1,250.
The other thing you'll notice up above that is the labor, there's a significant decrease there, a lot of that has to do with the cleaning services in this building.
Any other questions then for?
Well, back to the equipment for the water treatment. So there's a one-time charge for the equipment, but I understand there's the water treatment, but that much you get the equipment.
Quarterly testing and chemical addition
And equipment.
and equipment.
The equipment should be the equipment charge should come off that.
Right. All right, then going to parks. Looks like everything there, other than labor, is decreasing. numbers up on our water and sewer a little bit. That's based on what we've used again in the last 12 months. And then estimating what it'll be for the following year on prior usage.
Why is the labor going up in playground and parks?
The labor,
Yeah, the labor
Um,
pool, 18.5%.
yeah, that's just part, I do a whole spreadsheet of where I budget the labor for each year, and that's just projects we're doing in the parks.
So Darren has a large allocation spreadsheet for DPW personnel. If you take all of these facilities, the municipal building, the DPW administration, streets, and you take all those labor pools and put them together, that's the total labor number. But every year we tweak things a little bit. So this
Okay.
one's going up. You'll notice municipal building went down. The savings for the custodian is about $6,000, a little over
Oh, okay.
$6,000. So there's $4,000 of less time spent here. So you kind of got to look at all of them and kind of,
The budget is, it puts 2,080 hours, man hours per person in each job description and throughout all of the budgets.
and they never are right either. It's just a guess.
Okay.
I'll put money in streets one year and we'll spend more time in parks, or we'll put money in parks one year and we'll have to spend more time at the municipal building.
So there's nothing specific that we plan on doing in parks that we are
It's just
thinking this.
trying to true it up.
We spent more time in parks this year, so we're trying to even it out for next year.
Some year I'll hit that number 100%.
No, you won't.
You're running out of years. You're running out of years.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, maybe you could do like a summary of all of them together, you know, add them all together by like, you know, the account number. That would be like a summary of them all, and that maybe would be a
Well, that would just be his sheet.
I can share that spreadsheet.
Oh, you have
Yeah,
something like that?
his spreadsheet, his allocation spreadsheet.
Yeah, but I mean, that might be something that would be helpful, like, you know, on top of it, because then if you don't have to talk about the allocation anymore, you could look at them all together and what the percentage increase. Then we'd be able to see the real $6,000 savings as well, you know?
Oh, you're saying to show them all. The only, I know what you're saying, the only
Yeah, is
problem
that
with that is there's
103 at
also
the end?
utilities that play into this. But
Oh, they get allocated utilities
Yes.
too? Oh,
some of them,
sure.
so it's,
Okay.
Okay, any questions, parks, playgrounds? Swimming pool. A little bit of a decrease in shop and cleaning supplies. That's just based on what we've spent this year so far. We switched to a couple different chemicals that are cheaper. With the change in the custodian last year, we were buying a lot of our cleaning supplies through a service, which now we've switched to that I purchase online and keep inventory of our cleaning supplies, and pools included in what I purchase online. And then a little bit of an increase in chemicals at the pool based on what we used this year for chemicals, chlorine, and other chemicals that we use for the pool. Community center. Yeah.
Pool labor is double from what budgeted, what happened there, and we've got some real concerns about
Yeah.
the direction that's going.
Well, we ended up repainting the baby pool this year. After it opened, we had to drain it and repaint it again. Because the first paint job that we put on it, once we opened, it was too slippery for the kids. So we drained the pool and repainted the pool again. That's why we spent so much labor at the pool this year in 19.
and there is more time being spent there, but just keep in mind, this is just DPW personnel. This has nothing to do with the pool personnel.
And this is not pool staff.
But, so yeah, there's definitely more time being spent there by DPW to make sure everything's running right, that there's, you know, that it's aging pool and,
Part of the increase for the 2020 budget is going to be that my staff is doing the chemical testing every day, not the pool staff anymore.
and I will mention, just if you look at the estimated actual, you're gonna say, what were you guys thinking when you put that estimated actual in there? We Because of this allocation, we always because at the end of the year, they're all general fund dollars, and they all will work themselves out to be the end number. If we were gonna go in and try and estimate actuals we try to adjust the budget number for these numbers, but we don't necessarily try to adjust the estimated actuals, because it becomes a nightmare, and you have to make sure in the end that they all equal what they're supposed to equal. So it's just easier if we just put in the budget number for the estimated actual in these allocations.
Nick, I think all your numbers at the top of the page are inverted there. I think it's supposed to be 2019
Oh.
estimated and 2020 budget, right?
That's correct. I had to change all of those, and I thought, I got the rest of them right, I think. That one I must have messed up. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to community center. Maintenance repair facility, the increase there is to do the floors. Floor, tile floor waxing is $1,075 to do that building. Do all the floors once.
Is that what we usually do once a year?
Yeah. That's what we try to do, that's what I've been trying to do, but been unsuccessful getting it done. Alright, any other questions with those two, with the pool or community center? Then we'll go to the garage. You'll see an increase in shop and cleaning supplies. That's with me purchasing things online, and we're using them at that facility only now, where before we might have been using something there that should have been used somewhere else. Now we're storing it. All supplies are stored in different locations now, just for that facility. And facility maintenance, that has a garage door replacement in that number. One of the garage doors is below capital cost, $1,900 to replace one of the existing doors. The door is just rusting out, falling apart, and before we have it fall off the cracks and stuff, I put it in this budget to replace that one door in the spring.
Again, the next few pages are the details for that section. And then the next main section would be the culture and recreation section.
Do you want to finish facilities?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done with that.
No, I still have two facilities
Where
that
were
are
they?
part of other budgets.
Oh, I didn't print those.
Okay.
That library facility, we'll talk about with library, and what's the other one?
EMS, house,
We went over that last time.
okay.
Yep. So then we're on the community center. This is the culture and rec budget portion of that, which is a extremely small budget for the IT and sales tax and materials. That's pretty much mostly my stuff, but Darren, you can go on with this swimming pool, which really you don't have much to do with that either.
No.
The swimming pool, the other thing, just to keep in mind when going through this, you're gonna see the wages portion as the current actual is higher than the estimated actual. The reason for that is we get reimbursed from the school district for swimming lessons. So that brings that number back down. Even though we spend the $54,000, we'll get 10,000 or so back from the school. The rest of the numbers, there's a increase in general office of about $1,000. There was a few things Lori wanted to put in there.
I thought it was for concessions, and then our licenses cost more from the
Yep.
county.
County treasurer licenses.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the community center, that's why I couldn't find it. So, Fond du Lac treasurer license is 600, and then concession supply, she upped it, I think it used to be in there at 3,000, she increased it to 3,600. They do, I mean, there is obviously a profit that comes back from that, and then the license increased. Those are details, are in the details section. So overall, it's a small increase, from last year. Question?
I got a question, Mike. Quick, I mean, after we get through the budget stuff, is Lori gonna come and make a presentation to the board, how things are at?
Sure.
Where we want to, maybe look at the rates and stuff for the upcoming year,
Sure.
to see if we should look at adjusting anything.
Yeah.
See how the rest of it-
Sure. Try and have that done before we get through the budget, so we make a
We
decision.
do have the report ready to go
Yep.
from the attendance and all that.
Yep.
so.
Yep. So we can have Lori, maybe have her come to the next meeting, do that right away. So that's that section, and the rest of it's really mine too. So, is there any more questions on that? Culture Rec?
What is cleaning of the community center? What department did that fall in again?
So are you asking how we're cleaning the community center?
Where's the cost for cleaning it?
It's-
Yes, who's cleaning it?
Basically what we've done is contracted 10 hour, not contracted, we've budgeted 10 hours. Darren's budgeted 10 hours a week to do both the library and the community center. Whether we haven't decided what we're gonna do yet. We have some ideas with one of our current employees, maybe doing it part-time after summer help, after we let them go from summer. If we don't do that, we still have the money in there that 10 hours a week should cover our contracted costs. Right now, it's in there at 10 hours a week. Good question. I should have brought that up.
I missed that also.
The next section is inspections, planning, and zoning. There's really not a lot to talk about here. The inspections portion is just, the cost of living, 2% increase. Got, this really pertains to one person, so it's not a lot of detail that we can adjust. IT network slightly up, and that's best guess at this point. I told you that's probably gonna change. His training and conference number has been getting a little bit more expensive. We bumped it $100. He has a lot of continuing education that is required. And then the rest of these numbers you'll see, weights and measures, we did lose. This really doesn't matter because whatever we get charged, we bill back to but we did lose one of our gas stations, so that went down a little bit. So. Planning and zoning, the biggest number you'll see the change is the 219 at planning and zoning. That's for our comprehensive plan update. If you recall, it was an $18,000 contract. 12 of it was last year, 6,000 is next year. There's the $1,000 for mapping and plating is we're kind of a little bit behind. We have to get a legal description done of the entire village boundary, and that's what the $1,000 is in there for. Plan commission meetings, we have probably had more than we have in the past. We also upped that per diem, if you recall, last year from $10 to $20, so that you'll see that increase. Printing and reproduction, it's just, these are small increases that we just are kind of assuming are gonna happen. Dues and subscriptions, there was $100 in there for being part of an organization that we haven't been part of for a few years, so I took that back out. And recording fee, some of these are just guesses, so it depends on whether or not things happen. People, some of these things are dependent on people developing land, so. Questions on that? Economic development, another pretty small budget. We do put some wages in there, mostly mine, I think. Is it all mine, Chris?
Just you.
Just me. The economic development engineering, we always try to put $5,000 in there. Sometimes we've spent quite a bit more than that depending on what's going on. This year I expect we might spend some of that yet because of Johnstone. I don't know that we will or not, but I'm assuming we might spend $2,000 of that. And then the $7,500 is the Envision or FCEDC, 50% of our cost to be involved with that. And that is all of the budget information for tonight.
Anybody have any questions on how it's presented this evening?
So we have a couple of follow-up items we'll bring back to the board, one of those being bulky waste, one of those being that 2350 number and admin for travel and mileage, and then having Lori come back and give a update on the pool numbers from this year.
Thank you. Thanks, Derek. Moving on to ordinances, discussion and possible action.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep,
Have a good night, Chris.
yep, you too.
Discussion and possible action on ordinance 2019-8, and ordinance amending 15.07 to include electronic smoking devices. We discussed this at the last meeting. Aaron, do you want to do a recap or?
Yeah, basically, all we're doing is taking our existing ordinances, one being the prohibition of the sale of tobacco to minors and the possession of tobacco by minors, and the other one being prohibiting smoking in certain areas, certain buildings, and we're including vaping or e-cigarettes, whatever you want to call them, in those ordinances.
All right. So does anybody have any questions on ordinance 2019-08? What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-08.
I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion by Horning, second by Price to approve ordinance 2019-8, amending 15.07 to include electronic smoking devices. Are there any questions or comments on this? Maybe a roll call, please.
Horning.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Streeter.
Yes.
Stutz.
Yes.
Whale.
Yes.
And now number 2, discussion and possible action on ordinance 2019-9 and ordinance amending 15.19 to include electronic smoking devices. What is the board's pleasure?
Make a motion that we adopt ordinance 0-2019-09.
I'll second that. So we got a motion by Stott, second by Streeter to approve ordinance 2019-9 and ordinance amending 15.19 to include electronic smoking devices. Any other comments or questions on this ordinance? Seeing none, can I get a roll call, please?
Horning.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Streeter.
Yes.
Stutz.
Yes.
Whale.
Yes.
Communications. Any communications? Seeing none, down to new business. Any new business? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, second?
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion by Will, second by Price to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thanks for coming, everybody.